cigarette holder, which wakes me over his shoulder. He digs me out catting that satin doll. Well, baby, shall we go out skipping? Careful, I may go. You're flipping, speaks Latin, that satin doll. He's nobody's fool, so I'm playing it cool as can be. I'll give it a whirl, but I ain't for no boy catching me. Switch your early telephone numbers. Well, you know I'm doing my rumbers with Bruno and that in my satin doll. And that in my satin doll.
What's up guys, I'm Tom Ainsworth. I'm back in Pirate Studios for another drum lesson, and this week we've got the third track out of the Grade 2 Trinity syllabus, and this one's called Satin Doll. This is probably my favourite track out of Grade 2, purely because it's an awesome jazz tune. If you've not heard of it or anything, just type in Spotify or Apple Music or Google, YouTube, whatever it is, just type in Satin Doll. We've got Count Basie and he does an awesome version with Ella Fitzgerald. So starting this one off guys, the first thing as always you want to be checking is the time signature. So here we're in 4/4 there, we can see just by the 4/4, the counting, all of that. The next thing you want to be looking at is what the tempo is and what that actually means. So there we've got swing and we've got the quarter notes equaling 106 BPM. But next to it, it's just got a little note. You've got a whole note next to an eighth and then equals a whole note and then a triplet sign over the top of it. And that basically means that all your eighth notes and your 16ths are swung. Now being as this tune, we have got some 16ths there where you can see on the hi-hats, but then the fills are all eighths. So there you'll see for the groove in bar 5, starting it off, instead of having 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, you've got 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4. It's just swinging along, it's having that forward momentum with it, and you want to be really aware of that when you're playing. You need to be able to feel this. This is just your standard jazz kind of pattern, so feel it going in triplets. It's playing the first and the third triplet rather than the last 16th note, the out of the bar. So you've got 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1. So it's really useful at the start of the book if you want to have a look. I think it's on page 5 or something, but some program notes there. It gives you a little bit of an insight into what this tune's all about and kind of how you should go about playing it, because there's a lot of things that you'll change from how we've been playing before in terms of just how we're playing the kick drum, what we want to be careful with. We've actually got a new thing coming in, the stick on stick. I'll talk about that more in a second. But the main thing is it's a very quiet, subtle kind of piece, this one. Not all jazzes, but this one in particular. And you'll see that because if you look at the notation, there's barely any notes. You're not playing much in this one. Even the fills, they're very spaced out. You've got a lot of time to rest, and that's just to let the music breathe and focus on the lyrics. So the first thing I want to address is in the last bar on the first line. I think it's bar 4 there. It says stick on stick, and we've got the rhythm and 4. So we've got rest for 1 and 2 and 3, and then you've got and 4 playing there. And what it means by that is you're just going to rest the tip of your stick on the snare head. You're going to lift the rest of it up, so you're going to be in playing position here, but that tip is just rested on its own on the snare drum head there. What you're then going to do with your other stick, so I've got it with my right hand, left hand on the snare, is you're just going to hit that stick just like around the shaft, so around halfway up it. When that's rested on the snare drum just there, you're going to hit it with the other stick, and that makes the snare drum vibrate. So that sounds like this. So practice that, get that down. What I tend to do while playing this, because you've got pretty sporadic little intros between the ride cymbal and the hi-hats, I just have my left hand just resting on that snare drum right from the start. That way, when you actually come to playing that fourth bar, you don't have to worry about suddenly going from the ride cymbal and hearing while you actually put the while you put the stick onto the snare drum. So if you just have it resting lightly there, you don't have to press into it, just have it resting gently. You'll be all set up to go from that ride cymbal in bar 3 to the stick on stick in bar 4. Bar 5 starts you off with the actual groove, and I know we've not got any kind of backbeat or anything, we've just got the hi-hat and the kick drum, but this is still a groove with it, it's your jazz groove. So again, have a look back at the video if you're struggling to understand what I mean, particularly the one where it's the overhead, because I've tried to include that. But you want to have it so your kick drum's not resting on the head. So I play heel down for this to get a softer sound and a little bit more control with it. But then, say the bass drum head's here, instead of having the beater resting against it after every hit, I hit it and come away. So it's just letting the kick drum breathe. I've got quite a large kick drum here, but if you're playing a jazz kind of sound there, just like your tom-toms, you don't hold your stick into the drum like that. It's the same thing with the kick drum. You don't want to deaden that sound, you want to let it breathe, and it's just a lot nicer. You won't have that kind of extra hit with it. So as you've hit that bass drum, let your beater come back off of it. Skipping ahead a little bit, obviously we've got loads of repeat bars there and they're all numbered, so that whole section is an 8-bar section, because we've got that first bar and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they're exactly the same, repeating it. But then bar 8, a tiny little difference that you might not have noticed is just that cross stick on beat 4, and that's just a little lead into the next section. So this next section here, we'll call it the B section with that del segno sign above it, that kind of squiggly S with the kind of percentage sign going through it. I think we've briefly looked at that in another song, but I'll come back to it again for this because that's really important to it. But anyway, we've got the little O above the hi-hat, so we've got the open hi-hat. Just in the last lesson we were looking at that as well, check it out if you've not seen it. But we've got the open hi-hat note on beat 1 with that little kick drum, so you're feathering it, that's the term for it. So it's coming off of the head still, nice and quiet. And then closing it on beat 2, we've got the little plus sign above it for the closed hat. So you're just going open and close like this. And that continues all the way to the end of page 1 there. We've got a little fill break and you can see it goes to mezzo forte. So at the top we had mezzo piano, medium quiet, or to be honest very quiet, because that's the only kind of dynamic change we have. Now we've got medium loud, so this you can go to more of your comfortable playing style, but still not too loud. You don't want to overpower the music. Have a listen to the actual track of the guys playing it, you'll know what I mean with that. You can barely hear the kick drum at all, it just doesn't even sound like it's there. You want to be that soft with it. So that fill here, I'll play it a couple of times for you, just because again, even though we've not got the downbeat, it's resting, so we've got beat 1 and then a rest on 2 and 3 there. You still want to be swinging that. You'll have, even if you play the track without the click, you'll still have a click for this bar to keep you in check with it. And you want to kind of play off of that. You still want to know where that pulse is, and that comes from filling the space with movement still. So as you're resting in any of this, even the intro, you just want to be filling that space with movement. I like to bop my right hand about just kind of on the 8th notes or the quarter notes, depending on how fast it is. And that just kind of keeps me ready to go even when I'm not playing, so I'm not suddenly just like jumping back onto it. Anyway, that fill sounds like this. So as you heard there, all of those tom notes, particularly the 8th notes, are completely swung. You can't really do a lot about it when it's on the downbeat, because obviously drum's very staccato, you're just hitting that 1, but anytime it's an and of a beat, you've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, playing that third triplet rather than having it 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So for the next section, we'll call this the C section. We're going over to the ride cymbal there, and you'll see it's got the kick, it says 4 feel. And that's because if you listen to the bass line's playing on all the quarter notes, boom, 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 boom. And that's just a walking bass line. Now, even though we've got 4 on the floor there, you don't want to be smacking it. It still wants to be nice and gentle, feathering it, still coming off of the actual head after every hit. It just wants to be nice and subtle while you've got that 2 and 4 playing on the stepped hi-hat. So you've got this kind of sound. So again, even though we're raising that dynamic up from the previous section there, you still want to keep it nice and soft, just to flow gently with the music. There's not a lot of instruments in this. You've got your bass, your piano, a little bit of saxophone every now and then your vocals, so you don't want to be overpowering it. There's no electric guitar, no electric instruments at all with this. So then in bar 24, you'll notice we've got not as much a fill, but we've just got a little snare drum note there. The rest of it's just been chugging away, just keeping the time there on the ride cymbal. But you'll notice in that bar that we've got a snare drum on the ah of 3, so that's kind of like the third triplet. I'll play that a few times for you just so you get the feel. That single bar there, we've got 24, just so you know how that kind of feels. If you want to practice this, do it on every single beat so you can get used to putting that in rather than only beat 3. And I'll show you that afterwards as well. So for the second half of that, you'll see I was playing the snare drum on the ah of every single beat there. And I also switched up the ride cymbal pattern a little bit, so I started just playing the standard jazz pattern for that ride cymbal. You'll see it in bars like 22 and 23. And it's great to practice that to just get the coordination, because if you're comping or complementing the music, the snare drum's a great tool to add to little hits or just bounce off what the keys are doing. Or the vocalist there, you can play, they might do a phrase and then you respond to it, so call and response, that's what that is. So you want to be able to have the freedom to do that on every single beat, not just what's happening in the music, because you're not going to be playing this tune forever. You want to actually be going out in the world playing some jazz, so it's great to have that freedom to put the snare drum on the out of every single beat. If we skip ahead there to bar 28, you'll notice we've got that stop there where it says switcheroony. That's just telling you in brackets there, that's what lyrics come at that part. So if you're lost or anything, you're not sure if you're playing in time with the music or anything, if you hear switcheroony in that bar, you know you're in the right place. Now on beat 4 there, if you've looked at the actual rudiments that you should know to do this grade, you'll see we've got a drag there, just 3 hits. So we've got the 2 grace notes into that one big hit on beat 4. So they're very, very quick hits there, and they're just kind of like supporting or kind of falling into the main note. That sounds like this. So there I was playing quite open drags there. You can clearly hear there's 3 notes. Another way to play them is very tight, very close together, so you're squishing those 2 notes, so it almost sounds like a few more, and that sounds like this. So there it sounds a little bit more like a marching kind of style playing. To be honest, it's up to you what you want to put into this. I like to do quite an open one for this piece just because it is pretty slow. And being as we're going back into a quiet section, it just like, I don't know, it's just kind of not as ferocious, I guess, as doing it a pressed roll altogether where it's sort of buzzing a little bit. For me, that sounds as if it wants to go somewhere even further. For this, we're taking it back down, so just a nice sloppy kind of drag there, wide open, ready to go back into the section. So as I mentioned earlier before, we've got that kind of S symbol at the start of bar 13. If you look at the end of 28, so just after that drag that we've done, you'll see it says DS al coda, so that means del segno al coda. So what you want to do is when you get to that part, DS al coda, it's kind of like you're repeating, so you're going back to that squiggly S that you see with the line through it. So as soon as you've done that drag on beat 4, you finish that bar, and then you go straight back into the other section where we've got the open hi-hat, because that's where the S is at bar 13. You don't have to do that multiple times, it's just the one time there, and it's just to save people writing, so then we can fit this whole thing on 2 pages rather than doing it 3 or 4 by writing it all again. So yeah, you play all of it as normally, and then you get to that DSL coda and you flick back to that squiggly S, which is the segno, del segno al coda. So then in bar 16, so the 4th bar of that kind of little phrase there that we've come back to the segno, you'll see it says 2 coda. So we might have looked at that in previous ones, but just to remind you if you're not sure of that, when you see 2 coda and then that kind of target symbol, that means you're going to the coda, and that target symbol is just going to be on its own at some point in the music. In this case it's in bar 29, so you're just jumping to 29 and then you play till the end, or you play until there's any other kind of mark in there. So yeah, you'll be going from bar 16 and just continue playing, you don't pause, you don't rush it or anything, you just play that full bar at 16 and then you jump over to 29 and continue to the end. So you see in bar 33, the last line on the 2nd page there, we've got a couple of hits with accents, and they're called hits or stabs, so if you ever hear anyone referencing that in jazz, that's what that's meaning. And if you listen to the actual track without the drums, you'll hear those in it. I think the keys and the saxophone, at least the bass might get involved as well, all hit those notes at the same time to really emphasize them with the lyrics. So then the very last bar there, I think we've seen this again in a couple of other lessons, so check those out as well. But that little kind of half moon sign, that crescent sort of thing that's pointing down, a little bridge with a dot, that's just a pause. So once you've hit that crash symbol there, you just let it ring on. And you'll know, because the track kind of dies out as well with it, but no need to choke that at all, you just let it ring. And that takes us to the end of the song with that little fill section there. It just wraps it up nicely. As always guys, thanks a lot for watching. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate it, it helps me make more, and if you do comment, I'll know which videos you like, which ones you want me to do, all of that kind of stuff. So by all means get in touch with me if you've got an idea for another lesson. As I mentioned at the start, I'm here in Pirate Studio. Check out the link in the description there. And I've also got a code, it's just Tom, T-O-M, and then 1269, 1269, and you can get £10 of free credit, so that's like an hour of free credit there to get you going if you want to actually practice drums, guitar, bass, vocals, whatever you like to do. Check out the link to my other lessons for grade 2 so far. I've got that first piece, Man is Blues, I'll be having the other ones to come. Check out grade 1 if you're new to the channel, it's a great place to start off. I've also got some honest practice if you want to see what I'm up to and how I actually progress with the drums. I've got some longer videos where I talk about my thoughts while I'm actually practicing there, so they're pretty interesting if that's the kind of thing you're into. And as always guys, have an awesome week. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.